now, live from the Daniel Scapin studio, deep in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains, it's Mike Malloy.
All right, hey everybody, this is not what you think it is. We've had a situation here at the Malloy compound that requires my attention. As a result, George is going to play a rebroadcast of one of the programs tonight, Tuesday. I do want to say that last night and tonight and tomorrow night is all sponsored by our good friend Jim Schuckman. The issue I'm dealing with precluded me from mentioning it last night, too. So this is a rebroadcast that you're going to hear, and I appreciate your hanging with me while we get through this. Okay? So sit back and enjoy whatever it is George is going to play. Thank you.
And now, live from the Daniel Scapin studio, deep in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains, it's Mike Malloy.
Hey everybody, Mike Malloy here. Welcome to Thursday, the 21st of October, 2021. Thank you very much for joining me for this podcast. And thanks once again to the people who are keeping us going. I appreciate your sponsorships and your subscribing to the podcast and all the ways that you do keep us from going under. This is not a good time to go under anything. Anyway, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. I want to go back to Liz Cheney. I talked a lot yesterday about what she has been saying as a member of the Select Committee on the investigation of the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. But she is becoming more of a, I don't know how to describe it. She is not saying the usual stuff that a politician says. I think I'm getting this right. I'm still not clear, is what I'm trying to say, in how I'm evaluating what Liz Cheney is saying. But what I hear her saying is different from what other politicians are saying. She's sounding an alarm. Now, I realize Democrats have been sounding an alarm, but I think there's a subtle difference. I think the Democrats have been focusing on Trump, obviously, with the impeachments and the investigations into everything about him. They've been focusing on Trump and the fact that he is what he is, a racist, authoritarian pig. But I think what Liz Cheney is focusing on is the destruction of this republic. And the difference there is not subtle at all. It's a tremendous difference. Now, she does talk about Steve Bannon and the orange vomit, but only in the context of what they are doing to destroy this republic and replace it. They still say replace it with authoritarian regime. Liz Cheney is still doing that too, but she at least is, or at most, is focusing on the larger scope of what these monsters are trying to do. But anyway, I want to quote a couple things from her again. First of all, at a meeting of the Select Committee investigating the riot, Liz Cheney said something very important about both Donald Trump and this miserable son of a bitch, Steve Bannon. And here's what she said, and thanks to CNN for getting this out there. Quote, based on the committee's investigation, it appears that Mr. Bannon had substantial advance knowledge of the plans for January 6th and likely had an important role in formulating those plans. Mr. Bannon was in the war room at the Willard Hotel on January 6th. He also appears to have detailed knowledge regarding the president's efforts to sell millions of Americans the fraud that the election was stolen. Mr. Bannon's and Mr. Trump's arguments of executive privilege do, however, appear to reveal one thing, and that is they suggest that President Trump was personally involved in the planning and execution of January 6th, and this committee will get to the bottom of that, end quote. Now, I think I read that quote to you yesterday, but it bears repeating. I think it bears repeating every day until this threat to the Republic, which is an existential threat, comes to an end. And it's going to come to an end one way or another. Really. So what Cheney is saying is that the actions regarding the formulation of and the execution of the attempt to overthrow the U.S. government by Bannon and Trump are in and of themselves suggestions that both of these scum did things in the run-up to the riot that they're trying to hide. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. I don't know why Bannon is trying to hide anything. Bannon is a flat-out fascist. There's no argument about what Bannon's belief system is where it concerns governing a country or a population. It is purely and simply Italian fascism. That's it. Period. And he hates democracy for the obvious reason. Now, Democratic Representative Benny Thompson, who is the chair of the House Select Committee, said this yesterday afternoon, quote, and I think I mentioned this yesterday too. He said, quote, I think planning the insurrection is relative. There's no question Trump tweeted about it in the very beginning. He created the narrative up to the point, planned the rally, and obviously he said you need to go to the Hill and let people know you don't like what's going on, end quote. Now that's what Benny Hill said. Benny Hill, come on, Mike. That's what Benny Thompson said yesterday. Also, Cheney said this yesterday when she appeared before the House Rules Committee, who will vote, by the time you hear this, who will have voted today, I think they already did, to pass this out to the full House. And the full House will have voted today by the time you've heard this. But Cheney said this yesterday, it's critically, quote, it's critically important for us to recognize and understand how the language that Trump continues to use to this day sparked what we saw happen on the 6th. There's a much larger story that we need to understand about exactly what the plans were for that day and the fact that they went so far beyond the president's legitimate right to challenge the results of the election through our court system, end quote. So once again, even though I shared that quote with you yesterday, what Liz Cheney is saying is fundamentally, critically important. I mean, we are being warned, you and I and everybody in this country, we are being warned. I just wonder how many Americans are paying attention. But we are being warned that the end of this republic is visible on this fascistic horizon that these scum are trying to take us to. I mean, it's you can see it if you look. I mean, can't you? I certainly can. Now, CNN says let's remember what we know about the actions of Trump and Bannon, not just on January 6th, but in the planning stages leading up to the attack on our government. The very morning, the Orange Vomit had that rally, the Stop the Steal rally, telling the people who attended, I can't have anything for those people who attended the Stop the Steal rally other than complete, fulsome disgust. How dare you, son of a bitches, show up at a rally 2 months or 6 weeks after an election that was confirmed every time it was challenged by a man who has as much right to be president as he has right to, I don't know, to anything. Trump has no rights for anything. He is a goddamn gangster. He is a Nazi gangster. And yet you people showed up, those people who showed up at this rally. How dare you do something like that on the soil of this country? You know, these Nazi fucks talk about blood and soil. When you consider how many people have suffered and died because they thought they were defending democracy in this country, and then these Nazi son of a bitches show up for a rally by Trump? The Stop the Steal rally? They buy into this bullshit to the extent that they go to Washington, D.C. for this rally. This is incredible to me, just incredible. And then Trump told these robots who were standing there at the Stop the Steal rally while his fucked up family partied and danced and goosed each other in the tent right behind or off to the side of the stage. I mean, they were acting like a bunch of, I don't know what. Okay. Only after pleading from aides and congressional allies inside the besieged Capitol building did Trump release a taped video urging the mass of his supporters, many of them carrying Trump flags or wearing Trump paraphernalia. He urged his supporters to, quote, go home, end quote, while still fanning their misplaced grievances about a stolen election, end quote. And in retrospect, Trump's statement, that taped statement, was even worse than it appeared at the time. On a day that would lead to 5 people being killed and 100 police officers wounded, this rotten son of a bitch said this, quote, this was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace, so go home. We love you. You're very special. Jesus bleeding Christ, are you kidding me? No, no, nobody's kidding you, Mike. And as for this bum-looking Bannon, he was up to his neck in January 6th. Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, in their book Peril, have this passage, quote, Bannon said, referring to the vice president who was vacationing in Vail, Colorado, quote, you've got to call Pence off the fucking ski slopes and get him back here today. This is a crisis, end quote. Bannon told Trump to focus on January 6th. That was the moment for reckoning. Bannon said, quote, people are going to go, what the fuck is going on here? We're going to bury Biden on January 6th. Fucking bury him. End quote. If Republicans could cast enough of a shadow on Biden's victory, the book goes on, Bannon said it would be hard for Biden to govern. Millions of Americans would consider him illegitimate. They would ignore him. They would dismiss him and wait for Trump to run again. Bannon said, quote, we're going to kill it in the crib, kill the Biden presidency in the crib, end quote. Somebody said George Washington's nightmare is coming true. George Washington's nightmare.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.